Well, welcome to this webinar organized by the French Institute of Denmark with the cooperation of the Sustainability Science Center of Copenhagen University. Today, we will try to answer the question how to reconcile digitalization and protection of our environment. I want to address a warm thank you to all our participants. And first, I leave the floor to Mrs. Caroline Ferrari, the French ambassador to Denmark.
Thank you, Florence. Hello, everybody. Bonjour à tous. I'm very pleased to open this webinar, which is part of our special program, Digital November. I would like also to warmly thank the Sustainability Science Center for its great collaboration. Many thanks as well to Professor Catherine Richardson for moderating the webinar and to all the speakers. I'm very happy of this opportunity for several French and Danish experts to exchange on this very interesting issue, even online, and I hope that it will create further bonds in presence in the future. We are living a huge sanitary crisis, but also a period of huge transformation. In this challenging time, France and Denmark, along with the European partners, remain committed to acting against climate change. And almost five years after the Paris Agreement, it remains a key challenge for all of us. But the health crisis has also been accelerating change in our working habits and our daily lives, making digital technologies an essential tool to address economic, social, and educational challenges. Today, better than ever, we can see all the benefits of digital technologies, whether to share information, to communicate, to shop from your sofa, but also to use less paper and less transport. Does it come to a better environmental protection? This is not certain. Digital devices production and use are huge energy consumers, and they generate consumption of raw materials and pollution. It would therefore be wrong to consider digital sector as neutral or harmless for the environment. The French Agency for Ecological Transition, l'ADEME, estimates that the number of digital devices we have would grow from 15 billion in 2008 up to 46 billion in 2030. As for today, the digital sector amounts to around 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, a number that should rise steadily. Therefore, we have to find solutions to combine environmental challenges and digital growth. And I'm sure that the following discussion will address the issue in depth. Just allow me to echo here a few measures that my government has recently proposed and included in the French investment plan to recover after the crisis. Some of them have been elaborated on the occasion of a national citizen consultation earlier this year. For instance, implementing eco-conditionality for reduced electricity tariffs for data centers, developing the repair and reuse of electrical and electronic equipment, supporting green tech startups with high potential, launching of a major campaign to collect used phones and consulting with operators on their commitment to the reuse of digital equipment, or consulting with platforms to develop the sobriety of uses. I hope this seminar will develop many other promising ideas that could inspire our governments. I wish you a very good discussion. Thank you very much. And I now leave the floor to Mrs. Catherine Richardson, Director of the Sustainability Science Center from the University of Copenhagen. Dear Professor, thanks again for accepting to moderate this webinar. Have a nice discussion. Thank you.
And thank you, Madam Ambassador. First of all, it's always fun and exciting to work together with both you, your embassy, and with the French Institute. We've done this before, run common activities with them, and it's always a pleasure to do so. And this is a particularly exciting topic that we have here, and we spend a lot of time complaining about the fact that we have to hold this meeting this way and not physically. But I must admit, I do quite like meetings like this. Usually more people come, and they come from a wider geographic area, so we often get better discussion. So instead of focusing on how much worse this is than what's normal, let's focus on what's really exciting about doing this in a new way. I want to start this seminar somewhere entirely different. I want you to think of that picture that you've seen of the Earth from space. It came from the Apollo missions, and I know that you've got it in your mind's eye, that you can call it up and look at it. Because I think that picture is still changing the way we humans think about our relationship with the rest of the planet. That picture showed us clearly that the Earth's resources are limited. And once we've used what's here, we're not going to get any more. And it's the Earth's resources that actually what makes us prosper. It's the currency we use for our development. We often talk about climate and think that climate is our only problem, but we have many other resource issues. And why is climate a resource problem? Well, we have an atmospheric garbage dump in the that we share with every other person on this planet, and it has a defined size. When politicians go to Paris and say that we're going to maintain human-caused global warming to within 1.5 to 2 degrees, it's pretty easy to come back to your desk and calculate how big that resource is. And we know that it's half filled. And the whole political discussion is about who's going to get the rights to the last half of that resource. Now, normally, and many people in society are still convinced, when we have a problem, we have a barrier for our development, technology will fix it. And we look around and we hear politicians all the time saying, technology is going to fix this. We need to invest in technological development. It will solve this. In fact, technology very, very seldom has caused us to use less resources. Usually, technological development gives more people access to resources and ends up at the end of the day with us using more resources. What could be the one exception in terms of technology is actually digitalization. There's tremendous potential in digitalization to help us use our resources more effectively or more efficiently. But it's not going to happen on its own. And therefore we need a focus on making sure that we use digitalization in our service in terms of sustainable development. So it's very important that we focus on digitalization. We in Denmark are one of the most digitalized countries in the world. Even before the COVID, and even before we started meeting like this, Denmark was the third out of all of the 28 EU member states, was the number 3 in terms of incorporation of digitalization into all of our societal activities. And overall, our use of internet in Denmark is very much above the EU average. I today have managed to get my driver's license on my smartphone, and it warns me, you can only use it in Denmark. Other countries don't yet accept digitalized driver's licenses. So we do this an awful lot. And we need to therefore think about the environmental impact of what digitalization means. It doesn't have to mean that it's a huge environmental impact, but very often we know that it does have a large environmental impact, even though it's very difficult to estimate how big that impact really is. It's actually anticipated that the use of electricity, not least of which from all our digital devices, will almost by a factor of, but will almost triple between 2015 and 2025. And a smartphone contains something like 50 different types of metals. So we need to consider very carefully the environmental impact of what digitalization means. So we need to use, our overall goal must be to let society develop. Obviously, we all want development. I mean, who doesn't want the world to be better for their children and grandchildren than it's been for us? Not necessarily in terms of access to materials, but in terms of health, in terms of leisure time. And certainly we know there are many people on this planet who do need more material development. So we need development. Sustainable, that just means that it can continue as far out as the eye can see. And when we know our resources are limited and we know we're using so many resources, for example, for our smartphones, we need to be very, very careful. And our overall goal must be to get the greatest increase in human welfare for the smallest environmental footprint. As I say, digitalization can be an amazing tool to achieve this goal, but it isn't going to happen on its own. And that's what this seminar is all about. What do we need to do in order to ensure that we use digitalization wisely in our efforts to make sure that also our children and grandchildren will be able to enjoy the resources of this planet. So with those sort of introductory words, let me introduce our first speaker today. This is Laura Bremont. She's a researcher at IDDRI, the French Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations. She coordinates the project Lifestyles in Transition. She will present the main propositions and conclusions of a white paper that was issued by IDDRI about the digital transition and the ecological relationship with that transition. So thank you very much for being with us today, Laura. I now give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Richardson, and thank you very much to the French Institute of Denmark for inviting me today. I am really happy to share with you today one of our work on this big issue of the role of technology and digitalization to support the ecological transition. I'm going to present you some of the results coming from, as Mrs. Richardson said, a white paper that IDRI published 2 years ago in March 2018. It was in fact a collaboration between actors coming from the IT world and actors coming from the sustainable development world, if I may say. And of course, the ambition of this white paper at that time was to try to reconcile these two aspects, how we could use the technology and digitalization to help to support the ecological transition. And I think our ambition at that time was to try to pave the ways for a new political agenda. I am really happy because today this webinar shows that I think the way is paved. So it's a really good thing. I think one quote that I like to recall when I speak about this subject is a quote from one of the partners of this white paper, is to say that the ecological transitions knows where it wants to go, but it's struggling to fight its way. And in fact, the opposite is true for the digital transitions. So each one needs the others. And during this this work and in this white paper, we try to propose some different kinds of proposal intending for the public actors mainly. And I won't go through all of these proposals because there are 26. So if you want to have a look at this proposal, you can go on our website because the paper is in free access. But maybe I will show you just what are the objectives of this proposal and give you some few examples of these proposals. So there were a first bunch of proposals which concern the subject of reducing the ecological footprints of the digital technology. And I think it's something that have just been recalled by Madame l'Ambassadeur and Mrs. Richardson, is the ecological footprint of the technology. Let me give you another numbers. Between 1980 and 2015, the lifespan of a computer decreased from 11 to 4 years. So of course, there is an urgency to try to make this ecological footprint more sustainable. In this example, to expand the lifespan of digital device. So that's of course one of the first bunch of proposals that we make in this white paper. The other kinds of proposal was to ask how we could use the digital technologies to better design the green policies. And of course, its main challenge is how the innovator, which are many innovation every day all around the world, how this innovation can come with breakthrough solutions to help to design and to support the policies for sustainable development. And let me give you an example which is very simple, is to use crowdsourcing, so the data which are produced by the crowd, to better design, like for example, bicycle networks for the city. It could be really useful for the cities to use, and it's something that is practiced today, is to use crowdsourcing to help to design the bicycle networks and to help the development of bike mobility in a city. So that was the second batches of proposal. The third one is how we could steer innovation towards research for major impacts and for major societal and environmental impacts. For example, it could be how we could engage an ecological review of digital innovation program on the territories, so that they could integrate societal but also environmental issues. And it's not, I think it's not very obvious, because we live in a world where there are kind of fascination for technology, and sometimes we thought that technology will automatically solve all of our problems. Of course, it's not. And I think for major technological advance, like for example in mobility, it could be really interesting to integrate how we could solve, for example, sustainable mobility issues with autonomous car, for example. It's something that is not taken into account mainly in these policies, but I think it's one of the challenges to better integrate this questioning. And finally, the issue of data. Of course, data, it's really important. And the issue is how we could mobilize the potential of data for ecological transitions. How we could use data on the key theme of ecological transition for both the public actors, but also for the private actors. For private actors, so they could invent new services, and for the public actor to help them to design the public policies. And of course, there are also the issue of the open data, which is to expand the notion of open data and data for general interest, which is the term in France, to the theme related to the ecological transitions. So that was the main proposal of this white paper. Some of them was in fact implemented into the French national policy, which is good. I think since 2 years there have been a lot of improvement on this aspect. And as I said, if you are interested in learning more about this subject, the white paper is in public access on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. Do we have a link to that report that we can give out? Can we put it in the chat or something?
Yeah,
so
we'll
that
put
people
it in.
have it.
Yeah.
I should also mention to people who are here that we are taping this, and it will be possible to see these interventions and see this this webinar later on the Sustainability Science Center's homepage. I really like that quote you started with about the ecological transition knows where it wants to go and is struggling to get there, and it's not so much yet in the digital. So I thought that was very, very nice. And you identified 4 different areas, and now we're going to that need to be focused on, including reducing the ecological footprint. And now we're going to go forward in this webinar and address some of these issues. So the next person that I want to present to you is Romain Beauvois, who is a full professor of computer science at the University of Lille and a member of the Spirals project team at INRIA, which is the French Research Institute in Digital Sciences. He works on solutions to reduce the power consumption of digital activities. Romain, we look forward to hearing what you have to tell us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the nice words. So yeah, as it has been mentioned, I'm a computer scientist, so I'm professor at the University of Lille. So basically, our day-to-day activity focus on developing a better software system. So we really focus on digital services, and we try to make them better. Better can mean different things. We can do a more ethical software, taking into account privacy issues, for example. We can try to make a safer software with trustworthiness to include into the software. And the last point is to make a sustainable software. And energy and environmental issues are definitely the kind of topic that we address. Doing better software is not that an easy thing. Actually, it's not straightforward. In research, quite a lot of research in computer science. And we do need to understand what are the current limitations in the state of the art in particular, to better understand what people need, the requirements of users. Nowadays, it changed, and we need to adjust also to this change of requirements. Identify some trade-offs and eventually in the end find some solutions. So it's a very difficult task for us. And definitely nowadays, most of the digital services that you may use and certainly use actually are called distributed software, which means that they cover both software that needs to run on your mobile device, on your browser, if you're using a desktop machine or laptop, but also run in what we call the cloud. So it's a kind of a backend infrastructure that is located somewhere. Some are located in France, some other place in Europe, in US, and in Asia. Actually, this kind of infrastructure support different kind of application domain. And we face every day in our daily life different kind of applications that we use online for different kind of tasks, both for personal reason or professional reason. And actually, what we observe and the crisis, the sanitary crisis, has shown that it's going to accelerate is that we use more and more of the services. So there is definitely a trend that goes towards having more digital services and giving a broader access to these digital services. And there are many opportunities. There are many topics that encourage actually to go towards this kind of a digitalization. And actually, the cost and the impact of ICT and digitalization on the environmental footprint and the energy consumption is definitely not just a research topic, but also a societal topic. And we observe in France, for example, that a new law has been submitted to the French Senate in October to discuss about the impact of ICT when it comes to energy and environmental impact. So that's definitely something that we look at. That is the primary focus of our research. And in particular, actually, what we look at as a researcher in computer science is actually what we can do to try to mitigate, to reduce this energy consumption of this software infrastructure at large, trying to cover as much application domain as we can to make the benefit as broad as we can. And there are different topics that need to be addressed in this context. And what I want to say is actually it's a very broad topic, even for us, that covers different kind of challenges, and that requires somehow an holistic approach. And we always have to keep in mind actually what are the different aspects that need to be covered and how things are actually interacting. We cannot just look at a sub-part of the problem and figure out that solving this sub-part of a problem will solve the whole equation. So we both work on a cloud infrastructure. So as I said, these cloud providers are providing a big infrastructure that drain a lot of power consumption in data centers. And actually, they have been working a lot on reducing the energy consumption of these data centers along the last years, because they have this indicator called PUE, which is a power usage efficiency. That aims to reflect actually what is the energy efficiency of a data center. And the key benefit of that is that they have shown lately that actually the energy consumption of data center has been flat for the past years. Even if we observe that the traffic, the usage of this data center has been quite increasing a lot. So they've been really working hard on trying to have this energy optimization and make sure that actually going towards the digitalization of services does not induce an exponential cost in terms of energy consumption. And now they're also considering impact of renewable energy. So how they can actually include the renewable energies into the equation, what they can do to take care of actually benefiting of this renewable energies, but we also have to consider the cost of it. And what is more and more a challenge for them is actually what we can do about software. Because most of the time when you develop a software, it's kind of obvious for people, even for some developers, that actually you just have to write some line of code and you can just put this line of code into the data centers and provide your digital service to anyone. But actually, the fact is that this software are driving the resource consumption of the data center. So if you don't make any effort in having software that has a wise usage of these resources of the data center, then you can come up with some digital services that are costing a lot in terms of energy and have a huge environmental impact on the system. And some simple example that I can give is actually the emergence of new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchains, which tend to be widely used by engineers as this process of digitalization goes on, because there are new technologies and everyone wants to use these new technologies, like the devices that have been mentioned before. Actually, these new technologies can come with a price that is kind of huge in terms of energy consumption. So as a researcher, we try to work on defining new algorithms that are energy efficient, and we need also to work on what does it mean to be energy efficient. And we also try to work with software developers and users to better understand actually how do they use the technology, what is the benefit of using some specific technologies, and they need to and we need actually to better understand what is the best usage that we can do about these technologies, about these digital services. Do we need to go for a full digitalization actually? Do we need to rethink the way we use these services? We also think about frugality. What is the best use case that we can think of a given service to make sure that we deliver a service that really targets the requirements of users and stakeholders, and don't try to develop some new gas industry in the cloud that would need actually more energy to be consumed and then have some huge environmental impact. And the last word I would say that is actually that this is only part of the equation, as mentioned. We also have to consider other aspects of the environmental impact of ICT and all the services. And definitely, actually, the life cycle analysis of all this infrastructure is also a key topic. We cannot just consider the runtime part of this digital services, but the way we produce computers, the way we recycle all this infrastructure is a key topic, because a huge part of the environmental impact comes also from these phases.
Thank you very much, Holman. So yeah, I have to say that I was delighted as a non-expert in this field to hear a professor and expert in this field describe the cloud as being, and then a pause, somewhere. That's exactly how I explain it to my grandson, and I'm not an expert, so I'm delighted that I have the right approach to this. You say that you know, we're using these more and more, and I as a consumer know that I want more and more, and I can tell whoever I want more and more. I speak with my purse. Who's speaking for the resource side? I mean, we aren't thinking of it at all. Why is it that you're researching this? Is there anybody pressuring anywhere? Are we going to see environmental labels on our smartphone, or where's the pressure coming from this?
So actually, so as INRIA is a specific institute in terms of research, actually we work a lot with industry. That's one of the specificity of INRIA, is that we have a lot of collaboration with industry, and typically in France on this topic we have a collaboration with OVH Cloud, which is a cloud provider, and typically they are pushing a lot nowadays to push this information about the costs of the cloud up to the users, the end users. So they want this kind of labels to appear on website or mobile application, to make the user kind of aware of actually they only see the tip of the iceberg, because they often think about the smartphone or the laptop, but they don't really see what is the cost behind. And the cloud is clearly behind. So they want to put more information to make the user aware about, okay, that's the cost of your query on Google, and this has been also demonstrated before, but for any kind of action that you can perform with your computer, I can give you an estimation of the cost of your action, and actually how do you impact this consumption. So by making them aware actually of this information, we hope that it will also influence the way they use the computer. Maybe they will stop the computer, or they will close some application if they don't use it, or maybe they will request some more frugal features, because that's also one key point actually, is when you discuss with companies, energy consumption is not really a concern for them as long as the user is not ready to pay for it. And if the customer does not put this as a priority for the software development, then I mean, the company that is going to develop the software will say, okay, that's important, that's critical, we know that, but given that it's not a priority, it's not something that we will push forward. So the idea now is to make sure that actually the user requests this kind of change in terms of energy consumption, so that all the change that contributes to the development of these digital services will actually push forward this kind of optimization and make sure that the optimization can happen in practice.
Okay, thank you very much. I had a feeling you were going to throw that back at me as the consumer, but at least now we're forewarned. Thank you very much. We're going to turn now to considering how we can actually use digital solutions to try and protect the environment. And our next speaker is Olivier Corradi, who is the founder of Tomorrow, a startup which is settled in Copenhagen. He studied in both France and Denmark. Can you talk about Tomorrow and explain how your digital solutions are helping citizens and organizations to understand and reduce their carbon footprint, Olivier?
I will try in a very small amount of time that I have here. So thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me here. And thank you very much for organizing this event. I think it's very relevant. And we're very fortunate actually, because it's also very timely, given some of the big commitments we've seen from the different cloud operators around the world. And I'll come back to that in a second. So it seems like I can't share my screen, but in the worst case, I'll just speak instead of showing things, even though a picture could tell 1,000 words. But so in a few words, Tomorrow is a startup created a couple of years ago with the mission statement to help the world understand and reduce their carbon footprint. And I think the starting point for us is really to say, how can we enable the opportunity given by the general digitalization that is operating around the world currently in order to lower the bar for climate action? And if you think about it, the open data that is sitting around the world created by research institutions and various public companies is something amazing, because it enables us to quantify much more precisely and automatically the footprint of all of our actions. So I'm being told that I can now share my screen. It works, and I'll jump directly to a couple of slides that I prepared. And so I want to show you one specific example of something we have been building at Tomorrow, which is called the electricity map. So what this map does is that it shows in real time what is the footprint of consuming 1 kilowatt hour of electricity from your electricity plug. So basically it tells you, is now a good time to charge your electric vehicle, or should you wait a little bit instead? And it does that globally. As you can see here, on the picture here, we have various countries, and the greener the color is on the map, the lower carbon the electricity is. And it's a free product, a free website that you can visit on electricitymap.org. But the interesting thing is, given that most of our greenhouse gas emissions come from energy usage, we are thinking, or a solution that's typically invoked to solve climate change is to electrify everything, to have electric planes, electric boats, electric heating, electric everything. But we often forget to ask, but wait, how about the electricity? Is it actually green? And so electricity map answers that question using digital technologies and packages that into a simple system that people can use in order to understand how green electricity is. Now, one interesting aspect about this is that it is open source, which means that contributors around the world have been helping us to build that platform. And that's very important because it builds a consensus around the calculations that are happening there. Anyone can look at how things are calculated. Anyone can suggest changes. And I think that's what we really need if we want to get to a global carbon tax, where we all agree on how we need to price the externality, which is those greenhouse gas emissions. Now, one example I want to show is how digital solutions can actually help the digital industry. So if we look at data centers specifically, data centers are, of course, predicted to have or projected to grow significantly. The Danish Energy Agency is saying that in Denmark, we're expecting a 15-fold increase in our energy consumption. So from 1% to 50% of total electricity consumption in 2030. And that's not nothing, because even if we look globally, data centers could in the end start representing 3% of global carbon emissions, and that's more than global aviation. So it's a big deal. And I want to showcase one example of something we're doing with one of our customers that is one of the tools we have in our tool belt to reduce carbon emissions of data centers. So Google uses electricity map to optimize the time of use of electricity. So what happens is that in a data center, you have some specific activities, such as, for example, training a very energy intensive artificial intelligence algorithm. And those tasks can be scheduled to run at better times compared to others. And those better times would be times where the electricity is lower carbon because, for example, the sun shines or the wind is blowing. And that is exactly what we've been doing together with Google. So we give them a prediction in the next 24 hours of how low carbon the electricity is going to be in all the locations in which they have data centers. And they shift around the load, the consumption, in order to match the times where the carbon intensity of the grid is the lowest. What you can see on this graph here is a typical day at the data center. The dark shaded area showcases the typical carbon intensity they would have at that particular data center. And the green curve here showcases how much electricity they're using once they use this new technology that shifts the load around. And you can see they've been able to push the consumption to the extreme parts here of the graph, where typically the carbon intensity is lower, which means that in the end they use electricity at times where it's greener. And this is for me one fascinating example of what data and automation and machine learning can do in general to reduce carbon emissions on a very critical part of our economy. I want to speak about what the future holds and what we're very excited about as a next step of digitalization, and it is to democratize carbon accounting. And that's the thing that I'll finish up with. So we see digitalization as an opportunity to reduce the bar for climate action. And if we want to make sure that every company in the world understands their carbon footprint and does something about it, we need to automate the assessment part. And we can do that by, for example, connecting to accounting system of companies, or to cloud providers, or to smart meters, or to travel agencies, and gather all the data that represents what activities are going on in companies, automate the carbon footprint calculation, and then showcase it in a dashboard where then companies can focus their efforts on figuring out the actions and initiatives they need to put forward in order to reduce their carbon footprint, track their actions towards a carbon neutral future or towards the goals that they have already been setting. So with that, if there's any question, I'll be very happy to take them. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Olivier. I was wondering, I think that's a fantastic electricity map that you have there, but you say everybody just contributes to it. Why? What's in it for them? Fascinating question.
So the interesting thing is that a couple of years ago, electricity.map was basically a gray canvas. There was almost no countries on it. And when people started visiting the map, energy experts especially would say, look, I actually know about where we can get data for a specific country. Let me help you add it on the map, because I believe that the world should know about what policy such and such country are using. It would help me as well in my work in order to be able to compare various policies and highlight to the rest of the world what works and what doesn't, what needs to be made and how far we are or how close we are to the end goal. And so it has really come from a will and a willingness to democratize understanding on some quite complicated issues that shouldn't be left to the very few that speak that complicated language.
Super. Very, very interesting, especially apropos your democratizing of all of this. So that was a good example that Olivier came with about how digitalization can actually help us understand and maybe manage better on the energy front. We're going to finish off with two contributions, one from Christian Ige, one from Francois Laus, or maybe they're doing it together, I'm a little unsure, who have some interesting examples of how we can use digitalization to help help us with respect to some of the other sustainability challenges that we have. And specifically, they're both working on biodiversity. So Christian is a full professor in machine learning at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Copenhagen, and the director of the Science Artificial Intelligence Center, science being the faculty at the university in Copenhagen. It's an umbrella organization for the activities in artificial intelligence happening at the faculty. He will give us an example of how artificial intelligence and information technology can contribute to the study of biodiversity through an example with tree inventory. And I guess you'll go first, and then Francois will come afterwards, so I can wait with introducing Francois. Okay, super.
Okay, we can do it that way. So can you allow me to share my screen?
I can't, but I think somebody can.
Yeah. Okay.
That's better.
So, yeah, okay. Thanks a lot for inviting me. So I would like to start by talking about a project we just started about using deep learning, so some kind of machine learning AI technique, combined with remote sensing for unlocking global ecosystem dynamics. So this would be an example where modern AI machine learning techniques can actually contribute to the understanding and mitigation of global change. So it's a general theme of my work that I develop, or in my lab we develop machine learning / AI algorithms, methods for helping with achieving the sustainable development goals. And typically, so we contribute to several of those, but typically most of our applications are in the area here of goal 3, so that we contribute techniques for better prognosis and diagnosis of diseases. So most of our work is actually in medicine and health. But today I would like to talk about goal number 15, namely life on land, which is about to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, which goes for managing forests, combat desertification, reverse land degradation, and hold biodiversity loss. And so what are we doing in that domain? So we start out by the observation that we have a rapid increase in the development of remote sensing systems. There are more and more satellites which provide us much better data than ever, both in terms of resolution in space, but also in time. And what we do is that we would like to use these data to get a better understanding of ecosystem dynamics. And to make this less abstract, I would like to present a recent study which just came out, and it's also interesting because it's a nice collaboration between several countries. There are Danish researchers involved in the study, but also French researchers from Paris and Toulouse. So, and what we did here is that we wanted to actually count how many trees there are in the Western Sahara and Sahel zone. And we used machine learning for doing so because counting these trees by hand, that would be too tedious and not doable. So because, and I think to make this clear, I just show a video which was made by our colleagues from the NASA who also participated and who now uses algorithm for doing the tree counting. So this is the area we looked at. So in Western Africa, it covers several different climate zones. And our question was, can we now assess how many trees are there? So to measure the canopy cover. So let's zoom in at a certain area. And here you see the trees, how they look from a high resolution imaging system. And then we taught the computer, we trained the computer to learn how to count the trees. So we showed it some examples and said, oh, this is how a tree looks like in that area. And then it generalized and started counting in that, that area. So, and this allowed us to cover 1.3 million square kilometers to check how the tree cover there is. And here you see we counted actually 1.8 billion trees in that that area. So, and this is just an example of what we would like to do. So we realized that there are unprecedented opportunities for global scale monitoring of ecosystem dynamics. Having this huge volume of data, of course, requires automatic techniques to analyze this data, but it also is nice because having all this data also allows to use advanced machine learning techniques to learn from this data and provide new insights. And our goal is to go, I mean, of course, there's already automatic analysis of remote sensing data in the geosciences. And together with our colleagues from the geosciences, we now would like to scale this up using modern analysis techniques, which also take the surrounding of single pixels or single points in the image into account, and not only in space, but also in time. We have this project, which is called DWE-ECO, and where we develop these techniques for monitoring, predicting, and simulating changes in ecosystem properties. And at the moment, we start by looking at land degradation, so in particular deforestation and desertification, and sustainable climate change mitigation strategies like land management involving carbon sequestration. So that is an example where we use AI in order to come up with mitigation strategies or to support mitigation strategies for climate change. But what has been mentioned before today is that, of course, all this machine learning requires a lot of computation, and that also consumes energy. And so therefore, I would like to present now one slide more, which was kindly provided by my colleague Raghav. So I was not part of the study I'm just presenting now, but just to show some work which links this work actually nicely to the previous presentation. I would like to present a small, short, little software tool called Carbontracker, which my colleague Raghav and together some students developed. And what it does is some kind of software which you can use to track and predict the carbon footprint of your deep learning training system. So deep learning, this is this particular machine learning technique which is heavily used by Google for, I mean, for speech recognition, playing Go and whatnot, right? So, and because it has been so popular, so the computations used for that increased drastically over the last years. And so we would like to know how much energy does actually training and using a deep learning system consume. And for this, my colleagues developed a lightweight software called Carbontracker. It's also an open source tool everyone can download and use. And you can link it to your deep learning system, and then it monitors and predicts the energy consumption. And ideally, this could be something you can then report together if then you communicate or publish your system. So yeah, so with this, I would like to close my short presentation, and perhaps should I directly hand over
No,
to.
let me introduce Francois, but I'd like to thank you very much. Yeah. And if we have, you know, if unfortunately we're running out of time, but I'd really like to pursue at some point understanding why you threw your energies at trees. I mean, normally that's not something that grows in a computer department. It's in another department. And did the biologist come to you, or did you decide that that was something you wanted to do? How did you get this going?
Well, of course, this project. This is a so-called Willum Synergy project. This is a close collaboration between us and our colleagues at IGN, so the geoscience department, and of course the relevant scientific questions from the geoscience point of view. They are posed by our colleagues from the geosciences, and we try our best to provide the technological means to support them.
So the bottom line is synergy projects work. It's something we should be using more to get cross fertilization of disciplines.
So definitely. So I'm a big fan of interdisciplinary work, where I think that if you bring together real experts in their actually get more out of it than just the sum of the parts. You know, something I strongly believe in, and that's also kind of the idea behind this Science AI Center at the faculty.
Super. We need to move on, but thanks very much. It was fascinating. And finally, last but not least, as we say in Danish, the raisin at the end of the sausage. Francois Lause is an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science, also at the University of Copenhagen, and he is our example, our wonderful example of French-Danish scientific links, as he holds a PhD degree in algebraic geometry from the University of Nice in France, and a PhD degree from the IT University in Copenhagen in image processing. And he's going to tell us how digital tools can provide knowledge of biodiversity through projects that he's starting on with the Natural History Museum and the Institut National Polytechnique of Toulouse. Francois, it's over to you. And we'll use a few extra minutes than we've promised, so you get your time too.
Thank you very much. So maybe I would try to share my screen. So I have very little material because the project is absolutely starting. So, so I won't bother you too much with that. So I'm indeed interested in biodiversity and climate change. And other threats to biodiversity and problems in conservation, and specifically look at insect, and even more specifically at Coleoptera, which form the larger groups of insects. And we have a project starting together with the Natural History Museum of Denmark that possesses fantastic collections of both modern and deep time insects, and our project will consist in developing acquisition and digitalization methods of this large collection via artificial intelligence. We are in a hurry, actually. We are in a hurry because insects are disappearing at an extremely large pace. Maybe you have heard, I mean, there have been series of publications and they have reached newspapers that the insects have disappeared at a speed absolutely unseen as before, especially in Europe, where we have estimated that up to 70% of insect population have disappeared. This is basically due to a global warming, pesticides, but also deforestation, etc., etc. And we cannot right now follow in terms of digitalization and understanding of these species. And it's there is a consensus in the community that in order to understand what's going on with insects, then we need to get more and more data about them. And in my case, I'm in a bit specific small corner about it, because I would like also to provide understanding of insect diversity to understand modern insect diversity and the threats about them via all-time data. And when I mean all-time data, it's because so biodiversity from now comes from biodiversity from deep time data. And the Museum of Natural History possesses one of the largest collections in the world of insect fossils in amber. They are extremely well preserved, and they probably will shed light to a modern type of insect biodiversity. So we are working in a starting project, Fedorama, in developing tools for fast digitization, both of modern, but also of these amber data insects. So for modern species, most of the tools are kind of there, of course. I mean, it means that a lot of modern image processing tools and progress in artificial intelligence make it that basically within a period of 3 to 5 years, we can expect to have running systems for insect in ambers. Then we have a problem, is that most of our tools, they actually break down. They break down because amber prevents us to see the things the way they should be. It does it because amber has some, it's a light refracting medium and light reflection medium. So basically it will distort the data that we want to observe. And therefore we will put a lot of efforts to understand this distortion and be able to create better collections of these insects. I think I will stop sharing here because as actually I said, it's very starting project.
Well, it's a very fascinating project, I have to say. I've always been amazed by the insects that we have in amber, and to think that you can do something with them is amazing. And we certainly need to get these old collections digitized so we understand what's going on. So I'm delighted to see these links happening between the Department of Computer Science and the museum. I think we've had a great afternoon. And I think what I started out by saying that there's tremendous potential in digitalization techniques to be able to address issues, both research-wise, but also, as we saw with the electricity, to make us use our electricity more efficiently. So there's tremendous potential, but there's also danger. There's danger in overuse, and we have a tendency, or at least over-resource use, and we have a tendency in society now to choose various activities, meat eating and flying being the most obvious, and we shame people because they are bad people because they eat meat, or bad people because they fly. Maybe the next shaming object will be your mobile telephone. So maybe we need to find ways to make sure that when we use our mobile telephone or all these digital devices that we have, that it's as environmentally friendly as possible, because we do actually have we have limited resources on this earth, and we're soon to be 9 to 10 billion people, and we simply have to learn to keep our demand for the Earth's resources to within the supply. So with those words, I'd like to thank all of you for fantastic interventions, keeping to time, and I'd also like to thank the Institut Français and Björk at the Sustainability Science Center for putting together a program that actually highlights both the potential and the weaknesses of digitalization when it comes to sustainable development agenda. So thank you very much for being here. It'll take a little while to edit the proceedings of today, but it won't be too long before you'll be able to find this seminar again on the Sustainability Science Center's homepage in case you want to see it again, catch some of the references, or show it to someone else. So thank you very much, all of you, and we'll see you soon.